Now that we've made the cupcake base, it's time to make the part of the cupcake that for most people is the very most important part, the icing. And here's how we do that. We start out by cutting 3 circles. There are patterns for this in the book. And 2 of the circles, the smaller circles, have centers cut out. That gives us 5 rings, which, when stacked, rough out the icing. Now, obviously, we have a ways to go to get from here to there. So we start out by using some of the mechanical sanders to rough in the shaping before we do the finesse shaping later on. On each ring, I've drawn at a distance that is 3/16 of an inch from the top face, a line that goes all the way around. And I've done this on each of the 5 circles. This is going to guide sanding a 45-degree bevel that will help start the shaping process. And to do this, I'm going to use my vertical belt sander. I've set the table to a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to place this disc top side down, and I did mark the tops of each of the discs and rings to make sure I don't inadvertently sand the wrong side. I'm going to rotate this at the 45-degree angle until I get down to the line, or approximately down to the line. Since there'll be additional sanding that's done later, it's not necessary to have it absolutely precise, but you want to get it reasonably accurate. This is what the finished disc looks like. It's been sanded to a 45-degree angle all around, and I'm going to do the same thing on each of the 4 other circles, and then we'll put them together, and I'll show you where we are up to at that point. This is what the cupcake looks like at this point, where all the discs have been beveled. And I've stacked them so you can see we're coming along, but not quite there yet. Real cupcake icing, if you were going to pipe it out of a piping bag, is piped on in a swirl. It's not piped on in rings stacked one on top of another. To try to get that effect, we're going to do some additional sanding on these rings. If you don't want to do this step, you can safely skip it. Your icing will look slightly less swirly, but nobody is likely to really notice anything. But if you want to go all the way, here's what to do. The bottom disc is left as it is. We're not touching that. On each of the smaller discs, I've marked up from the lower edge a mark in one spot that's about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. I'm going to hold this flat against the sander. It can be a disc or a belt, holding it firmly so that we get a flat bottom, but putting more pressure at the mark, so I'm going to be taking off more wood at this point. And I'm going to do the same thing with each of these. Let me show you what this looks like. I've set up my belt sander in its horizontal position, with the fence set nice and firm. And what I'm going to do is to take each ring, placing the mark next to the fence, and when I turn it on, I'm going to roll up my sleeve so I don't sand my sweatshirt, and I'm going to push firmly at the mark, keeping my fingers away from the belt. As you can see, I've sanded it now so that it's lower on this side than it is on this side. And if I've done it properly, when I put it down, it will sit flat. I'm going to do the same thing for each of the other rings, and then we'll start putting it together and seeing about finishing the cupcake. I've finished sanding the the bottoms of the upper 4 rings, and I marked on each of them which the high side and low side was, which makes it easy to keep track, and I stacked them so that it goes high side, high side, high side, and high side. They alternate, and as you can see, you're starting to get a swirled effect. The next step is to fine sand them so that they come out looking like this. And I found that I enjoy using this inflatable 1-inch in diameter sander chucked either into the drill press vertically or horizontally into the chuck that attaches to my sand flea. And of course you can use whatever sanding devices that you're comfortable with, but you really need to think intarsia type sanding. You're doing this aggressively. It's not like rounding the edges of a box. You want to shape it until it starts looking like a cupcake. Once you have that done, sanding through the grit so it's nice and smooth, before you glue the rings up, there's one last step to be done. To secure the lid in place, we need a liner. Cut a 2-inch circle using either the base cupcake pattern or a compass that will fit in the recess. Invert the bottom layer of icing, center this, and to make sure it's exactly where you want it, invert the base on top and move it so that you have even wood all around. Remove this carefully. You can mark the position with pencil marks, apply glue, clamp it, let it dry. Once that's done, then you turn it over and you're ready to glue on the rings, keeping them oriented. And then once that's done, you can do any final sanding or tweaking as you'd like. The final step is to make the sprinkles.
Right.
All right, to cut the sprinkles, I'm taking my 1/8-inch piece of wood, and I'm going to cut a strip approximately a 1/16 of an inch wide. I'm going to thin this by cutting it in half. I now have 2 thin strips of wood, approximately a 1/16 inch on each face. And of course you can make the sprinkles bigger, smaller, the choice is up to you. I'm going to cut the strips into pieces about 1/4 of an inch long. Alright, I just finished cutting my first 3 or 4 sprinkles. Since you're going to be making a lot of these cupcakes, you're going to need a supply of sprinkles. So, since they're fidgety to do, it probably makes sense to do a bunch all at once, different colored woods, anything but padauk, yellow heart, bloodwood, maple, walnut, anything that has a strong color depending on what the background icing is. To get them on to your cupcake, what you're going to do is finish it in the usual way, and the way I like to finish it is with a sealer coat of shellac, and then I rub it down well, and if there's anything, any glue or anything unsightly, I take care of it. And then I give several coats of clear spray lacquer. After you've given it a base coat or 2 of the spray lacquer, spray it, put the sprinkles on much the same way as you would put sprinkles on real icing. And then when you've gotten the sprinkles all over where you want them, it may take several short sprays because you have to do it while it's wet, then give it a finish coat or 2 to keep it in place, and it really holds it very well, and you don't have to worry about any unsightly little glue marks. And at that point, your cupcake is finished. Thanks for watching the video, and enjoy making many beautiful cupcakes.